Thank you for coming. Please welcome Reverend Art Jaggard, the family pastor of the Erskine family, for our invocation.
Around the corner there is a plaque that says, "Ain't God good to Indiana, folks, a feller never knows just how close he is to Eden till sometimes he up and goes," written by William Herschel. Will you bow with us for prayer? Father, we thank you that you are good to us, that you delight in blessing us. We thank you for this blessing that you have given us in Carl and in Betty Erskine, that you have shown us how we can live life to its fullest. You've been an example and a blessing to all through them. Thank you for your presence this morning, for your Holy Spirit infusing all that we do, and may we all grow closer to you as we follow the example from Carl and from Betty. Amen.
Have a seat, please. We live in it's often said, a celebrity society. We certainly live in an award-happy society. I can't keep track of them anymore. In Hollywood, they seem to give each other awards about twice a week. And therefore, each year on this once-a-year occasion, we take a couple minutes to remind ourselves what is different about this award. Certainly different from anything Indiana gives, and to my knowledge, different than anything elsewhere. Here in Indiana, I like to think, apply a little different and higher standard. In an age in which you can be famous just for being famous, you can receive awards no matter what sort of life you have led, we aim a little higher. In Indiana, character still counts. Now, there are people, we may wish that our children could jump as high or run as fast, throw as hard, look as pretty, act as well, make as much money as some famous person. But that doesn't mean we'd like our children to grow up like them. Something else, there's another dimension that we Hoosiers still cling to. In Indiana, for us to be really proud of you, you ought to manifest integrity. Are you a person of your word? Are you a person who does the right thing when no one is looking? Are you loyal to your family? Do you make, if necessary, the sacrifices that go when one, or should go, when one takes on the responsibility of a spouse or gives birth to children? Are you a person of faith? Or at least, do you possess the humility, the selflessness that comes with recognizing that you are a part of something greater than your own ambitions and your own desires? The people who achieve great things and embody that sort of character, in the old-fashioned word that it's hard to find these days, virtue, those are the rarest of people. And it is for them that we created this Sachem Award. It is not enough to have done something great, to have achieved excellence in your chosen walk of life. That is only a starting point for this recognition. You must also have led a life of which Indiana can be proud, and which we would like succeeding generations of Hoosiers to emulate. That's why this award we have structured to be given at most once a year. There will be years when nobody measures up to this standard, and that's as it should be. It's been said that an age reveals its values in its choice of heroes. And to say a few words about the kind of heroism that we associate with Indiana, please welcome my friend, longtime civic leader, business leader, and now the athletic director at the University of Notre Dame, Jack Swarbrick.
Thank you. Governor Daniels, Chief Justice Shepard, Mr. and Mrs. Erskine, Coach Lasorda, past Sachem Award winners, and distinguished guests. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of today's ceremony. As a Hoosier and as an ardent fan of America's pastime, I can't tell you how much of an honor it is for me to participate in this ceremony today honoring Carl Erskine. Governments, business organizations, other entities frequently create a special form of recognition for a very small number of extraordinary people. In addition to the scarcity with which these recognitions are offered, they all speak to the core values that the awarding organizations hold most dear. In that sense, awards like the Sachem Award are really an expression of what we aspire to be. In the United States, a country that values achievement, the Presidential Medal of Freedom is reserved for contributions that have extraordinary impact. The Most Excellent Order of the British Empire has roots in Britain's long tradition of chivalry. The French Legion of Honor was created by Napoleon in an effort to recognize merit rather than lineage. And India's Padam Bhushan honors the Indian tradition of service to others. What then does Indiana's highest honor, the Sachem Award, tell us about ourselves? What does it tell us about what we aspire to be? The term, of course, comes from the Algonquin word applied to village leaders. It's important, however, to note that the leadership in that culture was not bestowed by virtue of plebiscite. Rather, it was reserved for those whose wisdom, judgment, and as the governor said, virtue, qualified them to lead. But characteristics like wisdom, judgment, and virtue carry with them their own sort of ambiguity. After all, no more qualified observer of the American condition than Benjamin Franklin found that in order to define the concept of virtue, he needed to divide it into 13 categories. No, I would suggest to you that the roadmap for fully understanding the nature of the Sachem Award and the values it reflects, the values that we Hoosiers hold most dear, is best found in the lives of the people who have been given this rare designation. They include Jane Owen, Bill and Gloria Gaither, and Danny Danielson. But of special significance to me are the first two recipients of this award, John Wooden and Father Ted Hesburgh. One of the great privileges of attending Notre Dame in the early 70s, a time of significant turmoil in this country, was the opportunity to observe and benefit from the leadership that Father Ted provided to Notre Dame and the nation. And as someone who's worked in the sports industry for a quarter of a century now, John Wooden has always been that industry's North Star. It strikes me today that as we honor another remarkable Hoosier, the connection between John Wooden, Ted Hesburgh, and Carl Erskine could not be more direct or more instructive. In fact, I might argue that today, here today in Indiana, the immortal double play combination of Tinkers to Evers to Chance has now been replaced by Wooden to Hesburgh to Erskine. In the lives of these three great Hoosiers lies the true meaning of the word Hoosier and the true value of this award. In these lives so well lived, we find the values to which we Hoosiers aspire. Consider just a few of the shared characteristics that define the virtues embodied in these modern-day village leaders. All are committed to a life of service. John Wooden always parroted, when asked why he coached, always parroted Amos Alonzo Stagg's response to that question, where Coach Stagg said, "It's because I made a promise to God." Wooden's version of that promise to God was a promise that he would spend his life changing young boys into great men. He viewed himself as a coach-educator. Father Hesburgh's service, 70 years as a parish priest, professor, and administrator, and still today, someone prepared to provide counsel to people like me who are trying to find our way. And Carl Erskine, just ask the people of Anderson about his level of service. Or perhaps ask the hundreds or thousands of Special Olympians his passion for that enterprise has served. All three reflected uncompromising loyalty. Wooden coached at UCLA for 26 years, an unheard of length of service in today's basketball world. But more telling as an expression of loyalty for me is the fact that now nearly 2 decades after the love of his life, Nell, passed away, every week John Wooden writes a letter to his wife. Ted Hesburgh served as president of Notre Dame for 39 years. The average tenure of a university president in America today is less than 5 years. And at age 91, he remains fully engaged in the life of our university. And loyalty for Carl Erskine? Tell me how many great athletes who achieve this level of fame about which you can say they played for one team and lived in one town. All three reflected unwavering integrity. The story of John Wooden's hiring at UCLA demonstrates that better than perhaps anything else. Coach Wooden wanted to be the coach at the University of Minnesota. That was his dream job. And he interviewed at both Minnesota and UCLA. And he structured the phone calls from the two schools so that Minnesota would call him first. And an hour later, UCLA would call so that he could accept the Minnesota job. A snowstorm struck Minnesota that day. And the athletic director could not get from the meeting to a phone to call John. No cell phones back then. And so the hour passed and UCLA called, and John accepted the job. Shortly thereafter, the athletic director at Minnesota called Coach Wooden and said, "Coach, I'm sorry, we're late. I couldn't get to a phone, but we want you to be our next coach, your dream job." Coach Wooden said, "I'm sorry, I gave my word to UCLA." The integrity has been demonstrated repeatedly in Father Hesburgh's life, but in particular, it was his clash with President Nixon over the future of the Civil Rights Commission that demonstrated that integrity. When he wouldn't compromise the course of the commission, the only chair that commission ever knew was removed from his office, and that was the right thing for Father Hesburgh. And the integrity in Carl Erskine's life is demonstrated in the success he's had in business, a success you can't have as a Hoosier businessman unless you demonstrate great integrity. Each had an unwavering commitment to justice. In 1946, John Wooden took the job as head coach at Indiana State. He had a team of all freshmen and one sophomore, and of course they did spectacularly well. And at the end of the season, they were invited to one of the two big tournaments, arguably the larger of the two to determine the national championship. But that tournament had a rule that didn't allow African American players to participate. And Clarence Walker was a member of the Indiana State team. John Wooden declined the invitation to perhaps win a national championship because of that injustice. Father Hesburgh, of course, was the original chair of the Civil Rights Commission. And more tellingly, that commission authored the Civil Rights Act. And when that commission couldn't find its way to agree on the elements of that act, Father Ted demonstrated extraordinary leadership and a commitment to justice. He took them all fishing in Wisconsin and sequestered the group at that cabin until over fish and stories, they agreed on the future of civil rights in America. Carl Erskine's commitment to that played out in an especially important way in this country. We all know the story of Jackie Robinson. and what he meant to sport in America. But regardless of the extraordinary qualities of Jackie Robinson, his path to racial justice in sport could only have been achieved with the help of teammates who were willing to help him get there. First and foremost among those teammates who made that possible was Carl Erskine. And all three are defined by the religious faith that is core to who they are. If you know anything about the three men, you know that faith is a foremost component of their lives. There's one other element that these three men share that I also find notable. That is that each is a chronicler of the times in which they live. If you've not already done so, I highly recommend that you read John Wooden's autobiography, They Call Me Coach, Ted Hesburgh's book, God, Country, and Notre Dame, and Carl Erskine's two books, Tales from the Dodger Dugout and his memoir, What I Learned from Jackie Robinson. They're books that inform, illuminate, and entertain. Being an observer and a chronicler of the times of one's life is, I believe, an especially telling Hoosier trait. If you consult any list of the so-called famous Hoosiers, you'll find that one profession dominates the list, that of author. James Whitcomb Riley, Gene Stratton Porter, Booth Tarkington, Lew Wallace, Dan Wakefield, Kurt Vonnegut, Ernie Pyle. The list goes on and on. I don't think that's coincidence. In a world where people generally are too busy talking, or today more often shouting, to take the time to listen, to really listen and observe, Hoosiers like Wooden, Hesburgh, and Erskine have always taken a different tack. Despite their extraordinary lives of success, these three men have always been more interested in learning about others than in trumpeting their own achievements. It is a type of modesty, honesty, and humanity that goes to the very core of what it means to be a Hoosier, worthy of being called Sachem. It's a person who embodies what I believe to be the best and perhaps first definition of virtue. It is the one offered by Aristotle in his Nicomachean Ethics, where he defined virtue as a balance point between a deficiency and an excess of trait. A balance he referred to as the golden mean. It's worth emphasizing that the golden mean is not the midpoint between a deficiency and an excess of trait. If it was, we could all find it. It is instead the right point. For example, according to Aristotle, courage is the mean between cowardice and foolhardiness, confidence the mean between self-deprecation and vanity, and generosity the mean between miserliness and extravagance. In brief, the golden mean, perhaps we should call it the Hoosier mean, is the place at which one can always find the men and women whose virtuous lives earn them the right to be called Sachem. I do not know for sure, but I suspect that the Algonquin tribe had no difficulty identifying its Sachem. Then as now, I'm pretty sure the people who achieved the golden mean were both as rare as they were obvious. People like John Wooden, Ted Hesburgh, and Carl Erskine are unique treasures which enrich the lives of all who know them. And these treasures are the Hoosier State's greatest single natural resource. They are our Sachem, the village leaders who make Indiana a superior place to live, the people to whom all Hoosiers are indebted. Thank you.
In presenting this year's award, I am compelled to start with a disclaimer that wasn't necessary in the case of the Gaithers or Coach Wooden or Father Ted or Danny, because many of you may suspect this choice knowing that I am a lifelong Dodger fan. as important, didn't have anything to do with this. I considered, when it became obvious to me who the selectee ought to be, I said to my team, I said, well, maybe I should recuse myself from the committee to eliminate any inference of a conflict of interest. Earl Good said, you are the committee. Oh, so you're just going to have to accept my word for it. We'd be giving this award to this man if he had never thrown a pitch in the major leagues. Of course, if he'd ever pitched for the Yankees, he would have been disqualified, but it really doesn't have anything to do, or much to do, with the excellence he displayed on a baseball field. It is much more about what he did in later life, in business, in the civic life of his community, educational institutions of his community. It's about the fact that he was a witness and a champion for civil rights, a witness and a champion for those who are disabled. It's about the exemplary family life that he has lived, that he and Betty have lived together for 63 years. It's about the quiet faith that has animated all of those years and all those accomplishments. And the way he has reflected well on the rest of Indiana. Carl tells in his books, he has told me that how much he liked the fact that one of the great sports writers of New York referred to him as the gentleman from Indiana. How many pro athletes of today are ever referred to as the gentleman from anywhere? Carl Erskine, you have reflected luster on all us lesser Hoosiers for a long, long time. And I'm glad that we found this small way to honor you. As I said earlier, this award is given at most once a year. This year it wasn't hard to identify that one recipient. When anyone here, next time you get that question, we all get from time to time, what the heck's a Hoosier? You can tell them that man there, Carl Erskine, best we got. Congratulations. Say a couple of words there.
Well, I got more to say than you probably don't.
No, well, you take all the things.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, it's tougher than starting against the Yankees. Well, it is remarkable, Governor, for this event to be in this place. It's just overwhelming. But thank you, Governor. You have a reputation, actually, of stepping over the line a little and just reaching out and being a little innovative and having the courage to make tough choices. I think you did it again. Yeah, I was always proud of Indiana. It did follow me. It followed me around the world, and I was always proud in Evansville, Brooklyn. Gladys Gooding played the national anthem every day. And then the next most played song in Evansville, Brooklyn, Tommy, was there. Whenever I came in a ball game, warmed up to start a game, whenever Gil Hodges, who was from Princeton or Petersburg, you can argue about that, hit a home run while he was circling the bases, or Billy Herman, when he coached third base, started the ball game of walking down to third base, Gladys Gooding played what? Back home in Indiana. I heard it over and over and over at Evansville. And I was proud. Of course, my name in Brooklyn was Erskine. Who's pitching? Erskine. And then the good fans behind third base, throw it through his head, Carl. A lot of encouragement. But, you know, I mean, I'm looking at you face to face today, and an odd thought came to me. Most of the time, you were behind me, because most everybody in this room had something strongly to do with this award. In fact, I could say it and mean it. It's all your fault. And it's understandable, because I never had a coach, teacher, coach, family member maybe, a spouse, who didn't expect more out of me than I thought I could do. I can see my teacher to this day saying, "Carl, you can do better than that." And managers came to the mound, Tommy. I gave up 5 runs in a World Series game in Yankee Stadium in the 4th, 5th inning. The manager dressed and comes out to take the ball. He did take it. That's a bad sign, but I thought I was gone, and should have been. He handed it back to me and left me in the game. 11 innings of that game, we won it. The next day in the paper, it said Erskine winning pitcher. It should have said Dressen, who had the courage and the guts to say, "You can do more than you think you can do," and he left me in the game. That's happened over and over. It's all your fault. I mean, Betty, God, Betty. Betty was 14. I met Betty in high school. I was very mature, 15 at the time, but she has been there all through these ups, downs, all that happened. And she's taught me. But the thing that happened with Betty, we were kids. We were young. We were in a youth group at First Baptist Church. And Betty led me to the Lord. Now, it says often that 2 become 1. I'll tell you, Betty and I, our 2 have become 3. Because that's been the glue in our life. That's kept us through all. Now, she's got a lot of moxie, believe me. I got a little moxie. Sometimes at home we have moxie. But you know what? The third dimension of our life has been our faith. And it's true. When I was through with my career and I wanted to stay in baseball, but I didn't do it, I sat in the pew of First Baptist Church, looked down and up and down the friends, family, where I'd been married, baptized. I told Betty we're not leaving, and we didn't. And it was a good move. Looking back, World Series, All-Star games, no-hitters, all the glitz of playing in the major leagues. You know what I think today? So what? Did anything really matter? I mean, yeah, the scores are there. You can look them up. Powerful talk. My mother would have loved that talk. What happened? Did it really matter? Did anything come out of all that? Yes. A black boy got to play in a league where they were never permitted. It wasn't his idea either. He didn't think he could do that. Branch Rickey was not mentioned, and hardly ever is. He saw Jackie the way some of you saw me. He can do more than he thinks he can do. And what did he do? He changed how America sees each other. He changed more than, I think, Martin Luther King. He had more of an impact. On the field, nobody could help him. His mother couldn't help him. Mr. Rickey couldn't help him. He had to prove it. So he hit the ball, outran the ball, did all the things on his own. He deserved to be there. And people began to see that social change was right. And Mr. Rickey doesn't get mentioned, but he was the guy behind that said, "You're better than you think you are." And when he asked Jackie, "I know you can whip anybody on the field, but are you strong enough not to fight?" Jackie had to think a long time because he was a fireball player. He was a hot-headed player. Now, Tommy Lasorda. Tommy's lived through this whole baseball history. day to night, baseball, trains to planes, radio to TV, East Coast to West Coast. Tommy's been through all that, same as I have. A lot of history. But what really mattered was the black boy in a Dodger uniform. That made a difference. I came home. Our careers were ended. I came home and to Anderson to stay. You know, people say to me in New York or L.A., now Anderson, Indiana, now just where is that? I can tell they got a little smug look like, where is this no place at anyway? So my answer is, it's between Moonsville and Strawtown. It's true, Tommy. It's on the White River, too. I came home and St. John's Hospital. Tom Van Housel's here. He's the president there. I see all of you in so many places. The whispers went through St. John's. The Erskine baby is mongoloid. That's a harsh term. But our society was in that kind of a mood in those days. We didn't accept people who were different. And so Betty, she was a strong one. She says, he goes home with us. He's not going to go to any institution. Jimmy goes home with us, and he did. Now, there's a leap forward here. I took Jimmy to work yesterday at Applebee's restaurant. He's going to be 50 years old in April 1st. I took him to work at Applebee's restaurant. He celebrated his 11th year at Applebee's. Now, but when he was born, the world was no more ready to accept him than they had been Jackie. It was just not done. Good doctors referred to institutions. Now, we had a governor back in the 70s named Otis Bowen. Dr. Bowen understood that there were things that needed to be changed about how we took care of each other. And so he formed a commission called the Indiana Governor's Council for People with Disabilities. He charged this committee, this council, headed by Tom Benford, to look at the state hospitals where there was a term warehouse for people who were unable to fit into society. And Dr. Bowen says, look at these hospitals and see how we can dismantle this cruel concept. And that's what happened eventually. The state hospitals were emptied out and the patients went back to their county of origin, and this evolved. This didn't happen overnight, but there was a sense of movement, a momentum that put people back close to their families, back to where they were born, where they were raised, and where they were now able to go back. Group homes evolved out of that. Job placement evolved out of that. Special education, Special Olympics. There was only one component. Eunice Shriver conceived the idea that athletes could perform at that level. It was an amazing change, but what it was another thing that came out of this look back over our history. And Indiana has been a leader in these social changes. Now, when I come to something as significant as this, I go to my lockbox and I get out one of my World Series rings. I did. I was driving over on I-69 today, and Betty says, why are you weaving back and forth? I was looking at my ring. Hey, I was proud of this ring. I remember, Tommy, the day we got the ring. Tommy was with us in '55. The look on the guys' faces, these pro athletes, little boys getting this World Series ring. What could be a greater trophy than a World Series ring? Let me show you one. Right here. You'll know what that is. Now that is a symbol of what you, Mr. Rickey, these other outstanding names of John Wooden, Father Hesburgh, you've all been a part of that because, believe me, you've all helped somebody like me do more with what they had, get the most out of what they'd been given. If you had to weigh the difference here, which is the greater achievement, you'd have to say we were supposed to win this. We were talented guys. We had great Hall of Famers all over the place. Whoever expected a disabled person? You know what Special Olympics does? We just saw the hockey team barely get nudged out of winning the gold. Did you watch their faces when they got the silver? They were not too happy. They did not get the gold. In Special Olympics, a 50-meter dash, 6 runners, a first, a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, but the sixth guy, kid, person, is 2 minutes behind the field. Gets the biggest hand. Gets the biggest hand, a recognition that you're getting the most out of what you've been given. So I say to you today, I'm going to sit down, thank the governor again, and all of you who came, that you've all been a part. It's all your fault. And society made the difference. People say to me and to Betty, you've done a great job with Jimmy. And I say, where is Mom and Dad? Why wouldn't we? But you have made the difference. Society has made the difference in Jackie's case and in Jimmy's case. And so when you applaud, make the first one for Betty. I'll take a little bit of the second one. The loudest and the longest has got to be for you, who were the mentors to guys like me and got more out of me than I ever dreamed that I could ever do. God bless you all.